The field hospital stalled. Medics froze at the entrance of the tent. The injured army dog broke protocol. He pulled against the handler, ignored commands, refused the stretcher. Everyone watched him lock onto one officer standing off to the side. A single focus, unblinking. Handlers raised their voices. Hands tightened on the lead. Nothing worked. The dog growled through pain. Claws dug into the dirt. The crowd backed away as his breathing turned sharp and uneven. The officer stopped moving, his face drained. His hands trembled as he lowered them slowly. No one understood what was happening. Not the medics, not the unit, not even the handler who trained him. Then someone noticed something strange. Every time the officer shifted his weight, the dog forced himself upright. Every time the officer stepped closer, the dog went still. And when they finally understood why the dog refused treatment, the truth behind that moment changed how the entire unit saw him forever. First, tell me in the comment where you're watching from, and do subscribe to the channel for daily stories. The dog stayed on his feet longer than anyone expected. Blood darkened the fur along his shoulder. The medics hesitated, unsure whether to move closer or step back. The handler tried again. The lead tightened. The dog resisted with a strength that no longer matched his body. The tent walls rippled as a helicopter passed low overhead. Dust rolled through the open flap. Someone tripped over a medical crate and nearly fell. The dog shifted his stance. His injured leg buckled for half a second. He corrected it immediately and leaned forward, eyes fixed on the same officer. The officer remained still. Other soldiers began to notice the space forming around him. No one stood too close. No one stood behind him. The dog took a step forward. Pain forced a sharp breath from his chest. Still, he did not look away. A medic reached for the stretcher again. The dog snapped the air inches from the metal frame. Not at the medic, at the object itself. The handler froze. Hands loosened slightly on the lead. The dog lowered his head. Not in submission, in warning. The noise inside the tent rose and fell. Boots scraped the ground. Radios crackled. A gurney tipped and struck the floor. The dog reacted instantly. Muscles tightened, ears flattened. His body angled between the officer and everything else. The officer shifted his weight again. The dog forced himself upright despite the injury. His breathing grew rougher. Foam gathered along his jaw. Medics backed off another step. Someone motioned toward the exit. Someone else shook their head. The handler tried to reposition. The dog dragged him half a step forward. The lead went taut, then tighter. The crowd felt it. Whatever control existed seconds earlier was slipping. The dog staggered. His injured leg finally gave way. He dropped to one knee, then caught himself before collapsing fully. A hush spread through the tent. Not silence, something heavier. The officer lifted one hand slightly. The dog stopped moving. Another medic attempted a different angle. The dog reacted before anyone could intervene. A low sound rolled from his chest. Not loud, not wild, deliberate. The handler stopped issuing commands altogether. Sweat ran down his neck. His eyes moved between the dog and the officer, searching for something that made sense. The dog crawled forward a few inches. Every movement looked forced now. Still, his body remained aligned with the same target. The tent floor showed the trail clearly. Blood, dragged fabric, claw marks digging into packed earth. Someone reached for the officer. A hand stopped just short of his arm. The dog reacted instantly. His head snapped up, his body stiffened. The hand pulled back. The officer did not move. His breathing slowed. His posture changed in a way that was subtle but noticeable. The dog noticed. For the first time since the injury, his tail shifted. Once, then still. The helicopter noise faded into the distance. The tent seemed smaller, closer. The medics exchanged looks. Time was slipping. The injury was not improving. The dog was losing strength by the second. A decision had to be made, and no one was certain who was in control anymore. The officer took one careful step forward. The dog collapsed. Not away, toward him. The handler lunged. Medics rushed in from both sides. Hands reached for the dog at the same moment. The dog resisted again, weakly. desperately. He lifted his head one last time and locked eyes with the officer. The tent held its breath. Something had reached its breaking point, and whatever came next was going to change how this ended. The dog did not lose consciousness. That alone surprised the medics. His body shook as they tried to stabilize him. Muscles resisted touch, not violently, purposefully. The handler stayed low, keeping the lead loose now. Any sudden pull drew a reaction. The dog watched the officer even from the ground. Medical equipment was moved closer in pieces. Nothing large, nothing metallic. A blanket slid across the dirt. The dog allowed it. Barely. The officer was guided a step to the side. The dog reacted immediately, his head lifted. A strange sound escaped his chest. The officer stopped again. That pattern could no longer be ignored. It had repeated too many times. One medic adjusted position carefully. Another slowed their movements. Hands were raised. Gestures replaced urgency. The dog settled slightly when the officer stayed still. Not calm, but less combative. Blood continued to seep into the fabric beneath him. The injury was severe. Everyone in the tent knew it. Time was becoming dangerous. The handler scanned the tent. His attention moved from the wound to the reactions around it. Nothing about this was standard. The dog shifted his head again. His nose lifted. He drew in air slowly. The officer noticed it. So did the handler. The dog did not sniff randomly. His focus sharpened. Each breath aligned with the officer's position. The handler crouched closer. He did not touch the dog. He watched. The officer adjusted his stance again. The dog stiffened, then relaxed when the movement stopped. A realization began forming, unspoken, uncomfortable. The medics paused treatment entirely, not by order, by instinct. The tent filled with waiting, not calm waiting, measured waiting. Someone checked the monitors again. Vitals were unstable but holding, barely. The dog exhaled heavily. His body sagged for a moment, then tightened again when the officer shifted his shoulders. It was not random. The handler leaned closer to the dog's head. The dog did not resist this time. His eyes never left the officer. The handler followed that gaze. He had trained this dog for years. He knew every reaction, every stress response. This was none of them. The officer finally knelt, slowly, carefully. The dog responded instantly. His body eased against the ground, his breathing steady just enough to notice. The medics exchanged looks again. This was no longer coincidence. The officer did not touch the dog. He kept his hands visible. He stayed where the dog could see him. The dog shifted his head closer to the officer's knee. Not contact, proximity. That movement changed everything. The handler raised a hand. Treatment paused completely. The dog's eyes fluttered once, then reopened. Still locked. The injury demanded action, but the dog was making his own conditions. The officer adjusted again, lower this time. The dog allowed a medic to approach his side. Only one. Another medic tried to move closer. The dog reacted immediately. A sharp breath, a warning sound. That medic backed away. The rules were becoming clear, unwritten, but firm. One medic. Slow movements. The officer visible at all times. The handler adjusted the lead again, looser still. The dog let the medic work for several seconds. Then his body tensed again. The officer shifted slightly closer. The dog relaxed. The pattern was undeniable now. The handler swallowed hard. His expression changed. Not confusion anymore. Recognition. The dog had been trained for combat environments. Crowds, noise, chaos. But this behavior came from something deeper, older. The handler glanced at the officer, then back at the dog. This was not about the injury alone. This was about something unfinished. The medic working on the wound paused again. The dog was fading, energy draining fast. If something did not change soon, the dog would lose the strength to keep resisting. The officer leaned forward another inch. The dog responded by pressing his head weakly into the dirt, a sign of trust or surrender. The handler felt it then, the shift in the air. Whatever the dog was waiting for had not happened yet. And until it did, no treatment would truly reach him. The dog's breathing changed again. Shallower now, measured. The medic working closest slowed further. Every movement became deliberate, every adjustment tested against the dog's response. The officer remained where he was, kneeling, hands visible. Still, the tent felt sealed, no one entered, no one left. Outside noise faded into background pressure. Inside, every sound mattered. The dog shifted his head slightly, his nose brushed the dirt near the officer's boot. Not contact, intention. The handler noticed the detail immediately. So did a nearby medic. The dog was not seeking comfort. He was anchoring. The handler moved around the dog's body slowly. He studied the positioning, the angles, the distance. The officer was not just in view. He was aligned. The handler crouched lower, eyes narrowed, memory surfaced. This dog had been trained for more than detection, more than patrol. The dog reacted again as someone reached for a piece of equipment behind the officer. A sharp breath, a sudden tension. That hand withdrew instantly. The pattern held. The medic paused treatment once more. Blood loss continued. Time pressed harder. The handler lifted his gaze to the officer, not questioning, confirming. The officer did not react outwardly, but his posture shifted again. Subtle, intentional. The dog responded by lowering his head fully to the ground, not collapsing, submitting to the moment. The handler felt a chill move through him. This was not fear behavior, this was training response. The dog had operated in environments where silence meant survival, where stillness carried meaning. The handler traced the dog's breathing rhythm. It synced with the officer's movements. Perfectly. Another medic adjusted a light source. The dog flinched. The officer shifted his shoulder. The dog steadied. The handler exhaled slowly. This was no coincidence. The handler raised a hand again. The tent followed the signal. Everything slowed. The handler repositioned himself closer to the dog's head. Careful not to block the dog's line of sight, the dog blinked once. Then again. Fatigue was winning. The medic resumed work in brief intervals. Each pause timed with the dog's breathing. Each touch limited. The officer leaned slightly closer, still not touching. The dog allowed more. The handler studied the officer now. Uniform details, wear patterns, posture. Recognition formed fully. This officer had not just served alongside the dog, he had been part of the dog's operational rhythm. The dog reacted to a sound outside the tent, boots, fast movement. His body tensed immediately. The officer adjusted position again, lower, closer. The dog relaxed just enough to keep breathing steady. The handler swallowed. His training had never covered this scenario. This was not obedience. This was conditioning tied to survival. The medic paused again. The injury was severe. Internal bleeding suspected. Treatment required full access. That meant moving the dog. The handler hesitated, then signaled a controlled lift. As hands moved in, the dog reacted sharply. A weak but immediate resistance. The officer shifted again. The dog eased. Hands froze. The handler stopped the attempt. Shook his head once. Moving the dog now would break whatever was holding him together. The dog lifted his head again, eyes locked. The officer did not look away. The dog's tail moved once more. Barely. The handler felt the weight of the moment settle. Whatever bond existed here had not been acknowledged yet. And the dog was holding on for that reason alone. The medic leaned back. They were running out of options. If the dog lost consciousness, the restraint would fail. If restraint failed, treatment would be impossible. The officer took a breath. Slow, controlled. The dog mirrored it. The handler noticed something else now. A change in the dog's ears. A slight shift backward. Listening. Not to the tent, to the officer. The handler felt his pulse spike. The dog was waiting for something specific. Something practiced. Something deliberate. The officer lowered his head slightly, his jaw tightened. The dog gathered what strength he had left. His breathing steadied once more. The moment stretched. The tent held still. and then the officer prepared to do something no one else in the tent had considered. The officer did not rush. That alone set him apart. He adjusted his posture first, straightened his back, lowered his shoulders. The change was subtle, but the dog noticed immediately. His ears shifted again, further back now, focused. The handler felt it before he understood it, a recognition that arrived without words. The officer brought one hand to his chest, not touching anything, just positioning. The dog responded by pressing his body flatter to the ground, not weakness, readiness. The medics froze again, this time by choice. The tent no longer felt like a medical space. It felt like a perimeter. The officer leaned forward slightly, his breathing slowed even more. The dog matched it. The handler scanned the officer's movements, each one precise, each one controlled. This was not instinct. This was procedure. The officer shifted his weight in a way that looked rehearsed. The dog relaxed another fraction. The handler remembered then. Not a memory of an event, a memory of training briefings, of units that operated differently, quietly. The officer adjusted again, hands steady, eyes fixed on the dog. The dog exhaled fully, a long breath that emptied his chest. His muscles loosened. The medics exchanged looks. Vitals steadied slightly. Not safe, but better. The handler raised his hand slowly. One medic moved closer. The dog did not react. Another medic followed. Still no reaction. The officer remained exactly where he was, unmoving. The dog allowed the contact now. His breathing stayed aligned. His focus never broke. The handler watched closely. Every movement, every response. This was the first time since the injury that the dog was not resisting. The officer shifted one last time, a final adjustment. The dog closed his eyes briefly, then opened them again. The handler felt the weight lift slightly from the moment, not relief, permission. The medics worked faster now, still careful, but no longer frozen. Equipment moved, pressure applied, hands coordinated. The dog remained still. Blood loss slowed, monitors stabilized further. The officer did not change position. He held it as if it mattered more than anything else. The handler understood now. The dog was not refusing treatment. He had been waiting for alignment, for a signal that meant safety. The environment had been wrong, too open, too chaotic. The officer had corrected it without touching a thing. The handler watched the dog's chest rise and fall, still shallow, but steady. The medics prepared for transport, this time carefully, this time with the officer still in view. The stretcher moved slowly. The dog did not react. The officer adjusted with it, keeping the same relative position. The dog stayed calm. The handler felt his throat tighten, not from fear, from understanding. This bond was not emotional in the way most people expected. It was operational, built under pressure, forged where mistakes cost lives. The medics lifted together. The dog tensed for a moment, then relaxed again. The officer mirrored the movement perfectly. The handler nodded once, silent confirmation. The tent no longer felt unstable. It felt contained. Outside, the noise returned gradually. Boots, radios, movement. Inside, the crisis had shifted. Not over, but controlled. The officer remained with the dog as they moved toward the exit, never touching, never breaking alignment. The dog kept his eyes open the entire time. Fixed, trusting. The handler followed close behind, watching something he had never seen written into any manual. Whatever this was, it was not coincidence. It was not chance, and it would not stay hidden much longer. Because once the dog reached full care, someone would have to explain why only one person in the entire unit had been able to reach him. The treatment area beyond the tent was quieter, controlled, sterile. The dog was transferred without resistance. His body remained aligned toward the officer as equipment moved around him. Monitors steadied further. The bleeding slowed to manageable levels. The danger had not passed, but it had changed. The handler stayed close, watching, connecting what he had seen. The pattern was clear now. The dog had resisted metal, resisted sudden movement, resisted unfamiliar angles. He had allowed proximity only when the officer adjusted posture, lowered shoulders, slowed breath, matched spacing. 3 clues aligned. The handler remembered the first, the dog snapping at the stretcher, not fear, conditioning. The second, the dog forcing himself upright when the officer shifted, not alertness, synchronization. The third, the dog's breathing matching the officer's pace, not coincidence, training response. This dog had not been reacting to injury alone. He had been responding to a protocol older than this deployment. The handler watched the officer remain still through the procedure, never interfering, never touching. The dog stabilized further. A medic adjusted the lighting. The officer compensated instinctively. The dog remained calm. The handler finally understood. This dog had been trained under a unit that operated without verbal commands, no shouted orders, no hand signals visible to an enemy. They used body positioning, breathing cadence, stance alignment, a silent code. The handler recalled the rumors, specialized operations, joint units that rotated personnel but kept K-9 teams intact. The officer had not spoken because speaking was never part of it. The dog had not refused treatment. He had refused uncertainty. Once the environment matched the code, the dog allowed everything else. The medics completed stabilization. Transport was scheduled. The officer remained until the final check was complete. Only then did he step back. The dog tracked the movement, did not resist, did not tense. The handler approached the officer for the first time. He stopped a few steps away, mirroring the same posture. The officer noticed, adjusted slightly. The dog watched both of them now. The handler nodded once, understanding without words. Later, in the quiet that followed, the unit reviewed the incident, video, logs, vitals. Nothing explained the behavior until the handler pointed out the moments, the pauses, the alignments, the mirrored movement. The officer was identified not by name, by assignment history. A past deployment surfaced, a specialized unit rotation, a K-9 team that had operated under silent protocols. The dog had been part of it. The recognition came slowly, privately, correctly. The dog recovered over the following weeks, scarred, weaker, but intact. When he returned to duty, adjustments were made, not to his training, to how others approached him. The unit learned. The officer never claimed credit, never spoke publicly. He did not need to. The handler filed the report carefully, factual, precise. It included the code, not written, described through behavior. The dog received official recognition for operational resilience under injury. The citation noted exceptional discipline and response under extreme conditions. Those who knew the truth understood it differently. It was not discipline alone. It was trust maintained under pressure. On the day the dog returned to the field, the officer stood at a distance. Same posture, same alignment. The dog noticed. His tail moved once. Nothing else was needed. If this moment moved you, just know there are more stories like this that never make the headlines. One click right now keeps you from missing the next one that changes how you see loyalty, courage, and the bond behind the uniform. Tap like, subscribe, and stay with us because the next story might be even harder to forget.